Nebraska ball fans, time to hang a banner.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head to TurboTax.com today to get matched with your expert.
Welcome in. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. A new week. It is Monday, April 7th. We are going to talk some spring football at Nebraska. The Huskers are just about halfway through the spring practice season. Matt Rhule had some things to say on Saturday. Actually, some kind of newsy things to say on Saturday. So lots to react to there in this show. But we have to do this first. Nebraska basketball is the champion of the first ever college basketball crown. The Huskers beat UCF 77-66 on Sunday in Las Vegas. They beat Arizona State by 8, and then they won the other 3 games, all by double-digit point totals. It was a dominant performance. Juwan Gary was the MVP. Brice Williams was on the all-tournament team. Nebraska roared back from a 14-point deficit against the Knights. Great moment, Connor, for Fred Hoiberg's team. Lots of Nebraska fans there in Las Vegas on Sunday to revel in that, including Dylan Raiola, who was there in Vegas on Sunday. I think this is a nice moment, but I don't really know what else to make of it. Where do we go from here when it comes to Nebraska basketball and the crown?
First of all, Dylan Raiola, you can't keep that guy out of anything. You know, there's a basketball game that Husker Nation is interested in. He's gonna find a way to get down there.
His support knows no bounds.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But no, it doesn't. I'm not saying that this doesn't mean anything, but it means something that is contained inside of the season that you just played. And so with that being said, it is good that they ended the season the way they did, because they had a very, very bad taste in their mouth the way the season ended, quote unquote, the first time. And that was horrible. The stretch that you went on to end the regular season, and then, to finish off with the Big Ten tournament appearance on the line and lose at home to Iowa. I mean, that was bad. So you got a new lease on life for these guys, who I think people, the way that they played over the last couple weeks here, or the week, people came to really enjoy these guys. They kind of let it loose a little bit. They just went out there and played led by Brice Williams and Juwan Gary. I don't know how Brice wasn't the MVP of the tournament, by the way, but Juwan Gary got the crown at the end of it, and you get $300,000. That's it. It's great. It makes you feel good. It's a positive memory for this particular team.
Yeah, and we had this.
Folks, they're playing for $300,000. ECJ. Pure.
That was fantastic.
Gus was unbelievable. He made another farm reference. He made another reference to the fact that Andrew Morgan's parents, they operate a farm, and because at the last one he was talking about growing corn and soybeans, which was great. Morgan was good. He had a couple back-to-back possessions where he finished off with dunks on pick and rolls, which was sweet. And Gus was on one. He could not stop talking about the fact that the teams, what was on the line in terms of money, which is how you play it. Like, it's cool. It was a unique tournament. It was a unique setup. Vegas is awesome. We have both talked about our love for Vegas on this show before. And so it treated Nebraska pretty well.
This is one way that we can probably extend the conversation about the crown is that this format, like what Nebraska did, and Nebraska being the first winner of this event, like they're trailblazers in the sense that like this is kind of the future of college sports. There will still be the NCAA tournament, there will still be the college football playoff, but beyond that, beyond anything where you're finding an actual national champion, it's going to have to involve compensation for players. And that was the incentive here. That's why it worked. That's what Fox was able to add to this thing and bring in the teams from select conferences. Somebody said to me that this is the tournament for teams from select conferences that didn't get selected for the top tournament or maybe the second tournament in the postseason.
So, no, this was the second tournament. This was definitely the second tournament. But I will say, yes, even though you now have good feelings about the crown, going forward, you don't want to be anywhere near the crowd. You don't.
Oh no,
you do not want to take 3 weeks off, and whatever happens to your Nebraska just so happened to have a pretty senior laden roster this year, so it stuck around, which I think was really advantageous for it as it came to the crown. You don't want to be hanging out for 3 weeks, and watching the NCAA tournament at home just so you can go play in Vegas and play in the crowd. So, absolutely, this is a good thing for Nebraska. But going forward, obviously, you want to go to the big one.
Right, Connor. This is a stepping stone. This is a building block for your program. And what's maybe a little disheartening for Nebraska is that the Huskers don't have Juwan Gary and Brice Williams back next year. It's going to have to be rebuilt, and that's kind of the norm in college basketball. But this would be different if your leaders and the predominant drivers of winning this event were going to be returning players. They are not for Nebraska. So you take it for what it is, and it's a second consecutive 20-win season. Very few teams in college basketball get the opportunity to finish their season on a note like that, where they're cutting down the nets. We're going to see another one tonight, Houston or Florida, and that is, of course, at a vastly different level from what Nebraska did on Sunday. But you feel good walking into the offseason, and perhaps Nebraska can find a way to pick some momentum from this. I don't know that it's momentum that would be in any way better than a first-round loss in the NCAA tournament. It's probably not. But, hey, you were on TV into the month of April, and maybe somebody out there, maybe the big center from Central Michigan who committed to Nebraska over the weekend, saw the Huskers on Fox and Gus Johnson calling their games, and that put him over the edge. I don't know, but they will quickly move on from this and start to build that roster for next season so that they don't run into some of the same problems that plagued Nebraska in those dark moments of February and March this year.
I will be curious to see what the TV ratings look like. I mean, it was in a really good spot on Sunday, kind of late afternoon after the women's national championship game. And then obviously the Saturday games were kind of a lead in to the Final Four games on the men's side. So I don't know. And Fox put a lot into it. I mean, it was a sharp broadcast and all of those things, and obviously it was in Vegas, and it kind of becomes something different that way. So I'm curious to see how many people watched it and how much of an impression that you can make from that. But yeah, I could already hear the conversation starting up about hey, hear me out here, making a run to the crown final is that's gotta be worth more than losing in the first round of the NCAA tournament. No, it's not.
No.
It's not. We're just gonna cut that one off right there.
Two final thoughts. One, Nebraska was unbeatable, as Fred Hoiberg mentioned, west of the Rockies, or really west of Lincoln, I think, is where the line might be drawn. The Huskers won the tournament in Hawaii. They went out to the West Coast and swept Oregon and Washington, and then sweep through the crown. So more games to the west for Fred Hoiberg in the future. And then I loved Fred coming into the press conference after the event with the hat on backwards and just total chill Fred. Like his guard was down. He almost dropped a Cyclone Nation for the first time in his all these years he's been this is not Fred's introductory press conference at Nebraska. He's been the coach here for 6 years. And he was starting to thank Husker Nation, and the word cyclone started to come out of his mouth. So that was worth a good laugh. And he goes, "That's where I went to school." But he quickly corrected himself. And then he called BS on the players getting all the money from the prize pool, none going to the coaches.
They were clearly having a good time. Like, the question was funny because it was, Juwan Gary, Brice Williams, and Fred were all sitting up there. They were like, "What do you think about the money?" Basically. And Juwan's like, I guess, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like he eventually gave in. He was like, "Yeah, it's kind of, that's obviously a really important in this thing, a really important part of this thing." And so that was realized by those guys as well. So, yeah, a nice heartwarming moment, I think, to end the season for a team that had its fair share of struggles this year.
All right, let's come back on the other side and talk about football. Matt Rhule on Saturday. What's going on in Lincoln as the Huskers get halfway through spring practice? That's next. But right now, a message from sponsor of the program, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying whether you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on the progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, so you can get 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
All right, welcome back. Connor Haberman Sherman with you here on a Monday, Locked on Nebraska podcast. Back to football. Matt Rhule spoke after practice on Saturday after they finish up their 7th practice of the spring. So we're about halfway through. Here's an update. They did sort of a scrimmage, but it didn't meet the threshold of a thing that counts toward a scrimmage, like in the rule book. So they're still going to be able to have 3 as they go along throughout the next 8 practices, which is kind of a lot.
Scrimmaging. Yeah. One of those practices is the Husker games, which actually I think he said the Husker games has to count as a scrimmage. So they're kind of losing a scrimmage out of this whole deal. They could have one of these next 2 weekends, and then probably right before, like maybe on the Thursday before the Husker games, have an actual scrimmage, like what would be the spring game, except there would be no one there to watch it. So that's a possibility that was discussed in Matt Rhule's Saturday Q&A session, which went like a full 25 minutes. This was another long one with the head coach.
But the most newsworthy item to come out of Saturday was Matt Rhule telling us that Hardley Gilmore, the transfer wide receiver from Kentucky, is no longer on the team. You could make a joke about how we hardly knew him. Certainly the first thing that came to my mind. So he's out. And Matt Rhule talked a little bit about, culture and people getting adjusted to that and things like that. So Hardley Gilmore, a definitely talented wide receiver from Kentucky, who people had high hopes for, he is not going to be with Nebraska this fall.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened there. Rhule said it was not something that it was an internal thing, like a violation of team conduct, whatever Nebraska has set out for the threshold for its players to meet. Gilmore fell short, and look, in a different situation in college football, perhaps there would be second chances. We've seen that with players in the past, but Nebraska's in a spot with 130 plus players on the roster here in the second week of April, where it has to get down to 105 by August, the end of August. And if someone steps out of line, that makes the decision easy about one player. So, accountability, all of that comes into play. And this is a spot at wide receiver where Gilmore lined up that in reality, I think Nebraska could probably afford to lose a player. You don't want to lose a talented player, of course, but Nebraska added a lot of talent at the receiver spot with Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter and the freshmen coming in, Cortez Mills, Isaiah Mosey, returning Ja'Cory Barney. So there's one fewer player in that wide receiver room, and Nebraska's one spot closer to hitting the 105.
I don't know how much more though. I mean, it's not like it's absolutely chock full of super talented and experienced guys. I mean, you do have some that you can go trust in that room, but I don't know. I always like to have more options in there, especially out of guys. I mean, think about Barney is the one returning who you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then obviously you have a lot to go off of with Key, and you have a little to go off of with Hunter. And then there's a couple freshmen that are going to be in the mix next year, and a couple guys who haven't really played yet. So, I don't know. It's not that deep. So.
Yeah, it's not overflowing with known commodities, but I think they feel good about what they have at that spot, and now there's one fewer player. So no Hardley Gilmore. Another piece of news from Rhule that he just kind of dropped in. I don't know how much of a difference this makes in comparison to what he was doing last year, but he said that Brett Maher, the ex-Nebraska and NFL kicker, is now full-time on the Nebraska staff. So they have him dedicated 7 days a week to helping Nebraska's kickers and punters. This will be alongside Mike Eckler, of course, the special teams coordinator. And Eckler gets involved quite a bit with the kickers. I know that from having talked to one of his former kickers from his days at Tennessee. And I don't think he's out there working with kickers on mechanics, footwork, things like that. So that's going to be where Maher comes in. But you have two full-time special teams coaches now because, of course, that's all Eckler's doing. He's not a part of the defense like he has been in previous stops. So more evidence that Nebraska is doubling down on its effort to fix the special teams.
Yeah. I think it's good to have a guy like that around for, for every day instead of just splitting his time or trying to balance all these other things. So that's good. And it's a guy who knows the program, who's inside the walls of the program as well. A kicking coach, man, it's a big staff over there.
Yeah. I don't know how exactly, like he says full-time. I mean, they're all kind of full-time, player. If you're like assistant, if you're like defensive assistant, it's not like you have a separate gig. It's not like you're outside of work, selling cars. So right. Full-time to me in the past, what full-time has meant is that like you're one of the main coaches on the staff. You're not right. Quality control. You're not a GA, but even those people are full-time. So I take it to mean from Rhule just that his presence around the building has increased and that he's with them every day, where I do think Brett Maher was kind of coming in from the outside and like lending his assistance when needed last year. This year, this is like his main priority.
Right. And there used to be restrictions on, how much time you could spend at practice and stuff like that, but that's not the case anymore. And then there was the offensive line conversation. He was asked about sort of how that's coming. They've had a couple guys obviously injured, as we've talked through kind of this entire portion of spring. Here is Matt Rhule. Mitch, I could click this here. Here is Matt Rhule on the update on his offensive line so far in spring practice.
The offensive line this spring has been one of our highlights. I think as people have come in and visited, especially people who've been here before, I think they see the physical growth of our guys. The guys that were once 290 are now 310. And a good 310, not, hey, we're just putting on a bunch of weight. They know how to practice. They know how to handle the work volume. Center, we have a lot of guys working there. Justin's doing a really nice job when he gets reps there. Sam Sledge is doing a really, really nice job. Other guys can rotate in there. Jason can go there. Probably forgetting some guys, but I think overall it's been a really good group, and it's fluid. We're able to move guys around, and to your point, you have Henry's not there, Teddy's not there, Turner's not there, and Gunner's not there. Those are 4 guys who started a lot of games. We're definitely improving, and like I said, it's one of the high spots right now, I'd say, for us.
Very calm, Matt Rhule. Very, 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 very kind of toned down. Nothing too exciting about that answer. He actually got into that a little bit. Also on Saturday.
Yeah, that's probably something worth talking about his current role in the program, and how he literally said the word bored. I'm kind of bored right now as he's walking around practice. No, but good to hear on the offensive line. Like, I think what he's trying to say is the room has kind of risen its level. Obviously, we often talk about the players, and the players are really important. They had a couple big additions this offseason, and those guys have really checked the boxes, it sounds like, so far. But really, if you looked at it from day one and when he got here to now, I think what he's talking about is that it's a different looking room from a physicality standpoint. So that's a big deal for them, and it gives you more options. Like, if you feel like you have to go a little bit further down the line, it sounds like those guys have really come in and stepped in place of some older guys this spring as well.
Yep. Speaking of the calm Matt Rhule, the serene Matt Rhule, let's come back and listen to something that he had to say about his role at practice, and we'll take a look ahead to this week in Nebraska spring football. That's next.
But first, a word from our friends from Monarch Money. Do you ever wonder where all of your money went? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Monarch Money, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, and all your spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. It has all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals for yourself. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for, drumroll please, 50% off your first year. Monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for half off your first year.
Welcome back. Final segment of the Monday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you to look at the week ahead. On Tuesday, we're going to get a look for the second time this spring at a few minutes of spring practice. So those are always savored moments to go out on the sideline of the practice field. First time they were at Memorial Stadium, so media were seated up in the east and the west stands. I would expect that Nebraska is going to be on the outdoor fields Tuesday morning, but we'll get word from the Huskers about that later today, and then have a report for you about what we see at practice. After the Tuesday practice, Marcus Satterfield, the tight ends coach, the $1 million tight ends coach, and Rob Dvoracek, the young rising coaching star who works with Nebraska's inside linebackers, are going to be speaking to the media. So an offensive coach and a defensive coach, plus a few players. On Thursday, we'll hear from Dana Holgerson again. So that's appointment viewing, and also EJ Barthel for the first time of the spring, Nebraska's running backs coach. So get word from EJ on what's happening with another EJ, Emmett Johnson, and the young backs like Mekhi Nelson, Quentin Ives, who are out there behind Emmett, and of course the two true freshmen as well, Connor Booth and Jamarian Parker. Meant to mention this, Elijah Judy, who we heard from last week in media availability, he got married recently, like within the last week, and shared some photos on social media yesterday. Did you see who was at the wedding?
I scanned through the pictures very quickly. No, who was there?
It was Elijah Judy with his bride and his son and some other family members, and Matt Rhule.
Nice. Nice. That guy's everywhere. I would imagine Rhule wasn't the only representative of his Nebraska football team.
I don't know, man. Like, this wedding appeared to be taking, well, there was an officiant there who was not a part of the Nebraska football family, to my knowledge, but it appeared to be a very small ceremony that took place, like maybe inside of a home. And Matt Rhule was what, I mean, if you didn't know, you might have thought he like almost appeared to be photoshopped into the background of the picture, but no, like Rhule tweeted about it, said it was one of the best moments of his coaching career to go and be there with Elijah Judy at the wedding ceremony. So feel good moment for sure. Dylan Raiola was not there. I thought maybe he would be like cheering from the sideline, but no, he did not appear to be there.
You want to talk about photoshopping guys in? I mean, that would be a pretty funny bit if we just started taking Dylan Raiola and started putting him in like famous events that have happened over time. He just he just shows up at everything. There's an idea that's a free one, guys. Shout out to those of you who made it to this point in the podcast. That one's free.
Speaking of Raiola, heard from Rhule on Saturday talking about Raiola, and there were maybe a question or two about Dylan. And one of the things that he mentioned that I found to be interesting, and I don't have audio of this, but Rhule said that they've been using GoPros in practice. So I don't know if the GoPros are like on the helmets of the quarterbacks, or maybe if they're on like a receiver, or exactly how the GoPros are working. But at first, Rhule said like it was a lot of buzz around the football facility about the GoPros. You heard Dana Holgerson, or maybe it was Glenn Thomas talking about this, and Rhule was like, "Oh man, you guys are like falling in with some trend that you saw on Instagram. Like let's cut that. Like we're playing big boy football here." But then Rhule saw the video, and it allowed him to go into the huddle with his players, and all of a sudden he got very interested because this was insightful. And not only could you see what was going on in the huddle, you could hear what was going on in the huddle. And he used this insight to make an observation about how Dylan Raiola has taken command of the huddle. And he said you can see it from that footage in that audio, that how the players respond to him, and that just the kind of command that he has when they're huddling up in the spring. So take that for what it's worth, but Rhule feels good. We've talked all offseason about Dylan's physical condition, and like he's conquered that. So now he's on to the leadership piece, which is kind of like it was dual pronged, like what Dylan needed to get done here. And they're happy with what they see when they can go into the huddle with him. Yeah.
Interesting. Usually that's kind of like one of those things. It's like a sacred place, like a players only type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So fascinating that the coaches will get to kind of see these things now. Hopefully it isn't kind of micromanaged too much, because I think you want that to be pretty organic. Speaking of observations, that's what Matt Rhule is doing pretty much exclusively these days. Mitch, I can hit this one again. Here's Matt Rhule on how his role in the program has sort of evolved over the last couple of years.
Anymore. That's the great news. For the first year, it's kind of my program as I'm trying to teach it. I mean, I think people, as they're out there at practice, they see a much different version of me, much more serene me maybe, because we have so many elite people in so many areas running the practices, right? Like I was telling Eck out there today, like I'm a little bored sometimes because, I'm not going to go coach the O-line over Donnie. I'm not going to run the offense over Dana. I'm not going to tell the receivers how to do something because DeKeel's so good. I'm not going to go to the special. Eckler's running the special teams at a high level defense. So we have so many good people. So I think it's our program now, which is really a cool thing.
Yep. So I kind of cut that one short. He went on to continue to talk about the players and the way that new players have come into the program, and he's happy right now with like the leadership structure from the top, which of course is him, and on down to the coordinators and the position coaches, the returning players, and he said that you can even see like that things are in sync because of the way that new players come in. And he talked specifically about the two I think that you'd expect. Like one thing that we've learned through this spring is probably that the two transfers who have made the biggest impact in the locker room on the practice field for Nebraska are Dane Key and Rocco Spindler. Like those are the two guys that you can say they have kind of, maybe they sat back at first. And I don't even know if that was the case with Rocco. I think he came in and felt like he had a voice at the beginning. But those are the two right now who are being looked to as leaders in this transfer class. That's not to say that there aren't things going on defense, but I think Nebraska has some strong personalities on the defensive side that allow the likes of Marcus Watson-Trent, Dasan McCullough. You might put Dasan McCullough in that group too, but the two that we hear the most about, and maybe it's because they're needed in these roles more than just about anyone else, the two that we hear the most about are Key and Spindler. And, when Rhule answered that question about whose program it is and what he does at practice, like he turned that also into an answer about the way that those new players have fit in.
Yeah, it sounds like that's kind of right on track for how Rhule wanted it to go, right? We talked about it with the offensive line and the bodies a little bit earlier, but I asked him a couple years ago, like, hey, eventually you want to get to the point where you're not so in everything. And it's not that he's not making, he's still making all the big decisions for the program and everything goes through him and all those things. But as far as how practice operates, there's a rhythm to it. There's a cadence to it. And he's got people in there who he trusts, both on the player side and on the coach's side. So that's a really good thing, in my opinion. I don't think that could be a bad thing if the coach feels like he could kind of sit back and trust the people that he's put in place to take some charge there. That means he's picked the right people to do it. So only good things, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. I think that does it for this Monday. Let's finish with one more listen to this, and then we'll wrap it up.
Folks, they're playing for $300,000. ECJ. Pure.
Gus, the best.
Right. We will only have that once. The crown is over. Nebraska has won. Revel in the greatness of the championship. We'll be back with you on Tuesday to talk more about Nebraska sports, Nebraska spring practice, everything that's going on in Lincoln. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball Podcast with Isaac and Andy. March Madness has one more day. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.